Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Small Biz Better Summit. It is such a pleasure to be with you. Day 3. It has been an amazing 3 days, and we have more in store for you. We, of course, have, backed by popular demand, the man himself, Mr. Sean Smith. Sean, how are you doing, sir?
I'm great, brother. It's always good to be here with you and all the people that you attract. Let's get into some good Q&A.
I love it, man. Thank you so much for that. And it's always a pleasure to have you on here, man. You are definitely a Summit favorite, without a doubt. Because, well, you're one of my favorite too. I'll just say that. But we love everyone, and we especially love Sean. Just the value, the knowledge you bring, and you're just so giving of all the knowledge that you have. And so that just means a whole heap to us. A whole lot to us. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for being with us. For those of you, go ahead.
I just said I appreciate it.
Oh, most definitely. For those of you who joined us on day 2 evening, well, not evening, depending on where you are in the world. So just day 2 of the summit, end of day 2 on the summit. Sean was with us for the conscious community conversation that was inspired by so many of the unfortunate Black lives that have been lost in recent years, and also still just sharing his knowledge, his expertise, and his vulnerability as well. So Sean really has just a tremendous capacity for tremendous capacity and application of the knowledge and expertise and genuine humanity that he has. So please continue to enter your questions in the chat, questions that you have for him about just business in general. It can be related to some of the states that we're going on, some of the state that we're in, whether it be COVID-19, whether it be the Black Lives Matter movement, or the conscious community conversation that we had on day 2. All of those questions are perfectly fine. Marketing questions, whatever questions that you have, go ahead and enter them for our man, Sean Smith. Now, for those of you who this might be your first time interacting with Sean, you are in for an amazing treat. So not that Sean himself is a treat, although he might like to think that, but you are in for an amazing treat. Sean has been in business now. Has it been 20 years?
15
yeah. Years. He's helped business owners make several millions in their businesses, millions in his own business. And I love his approach because it's more of an inside out approach, which is similar to the approach that we have at My Digital Marketing Agency. Not so much about the surface level stuff that you hear everybody talking about. He goes beneath the surface and addresses root causes, root issues of things that you are experiencing in your life and your business. And so that's really what makes Sean special, because he really gets down to what are those root causes, root issues that can really help you in your business and life. So Sean, anything you want to add before we get started here, brother?
Well, use the word root a couple times, and that's a really important word. You know, a lot of our problems are rooted. A lot of our sabotage, our beliefs, our patterns, our blind spots, they're rooted, and roots are below the ground, which means you can't see them. So when we talk about business, talk about really anything in life, but when we talk about business, you know, what most people are looking for are above the ground, tangible skill sets or techniques or equipment or, you know, just like capabilities, you know, and very, very rarely do those actually move the needle very much, because the roots are going to determine whether somebody's successful or not. So somebody that could have a root of fear of money or fear of visibility, let's say. Let me talk about fear of visibility.
Yes.
This is a hidden root for so many people. And I just say hidden because it's not what a lot of people are aware of. Therefore, a lot of people are not trying to heal their fear of visibility. What they're trying to heal is their fear of speaking, or their fear of sales, or their fear of networking. But that's not actually what the fear is. Those are just branches off of that root. The root that a lot of people have is visibility. And so if you have a root fear of visibility, and then you get skills around speaking, that's not going to heal your root fear. If you have, if you learn how to even do business, you know, you learn marketing, or you learn almost anything above the surface, and those things, those skills and the techniques and the tactics, those are all important, but they're impotent without root alignment. Never said that phrase. So if your roots are not aligned with your skills, then the roots are always going to win. And that's one of the reasons, you know, this happens in the opposite direction too. So people that are really successful in business, they can lose all of their money. They can, you know, the economy can crash, and natural disasters or COVID or whatever happens. You can pull everything away from them, but their roots will grow back. And the opposite is what most people are really dealing with, is that their roots are not in alignment with what they want to create in the world. And so that's why what you just said about the inside out approach is way, way more important. But it's difficult because we can't see that. We can see sales skills. We can see marketing campaigns. We can see websites. We can't see our root fears. And because we can't see them, it's virtually impossible for us to solve them on our own. Because then we'll be, you know, demanding that we not just see, but can fix our own blind spots. And so that's why I've started talking so much more about the mindset of entreneurism or entrepreneurship, way more than the skill set. My experience is it's probably 95% mindset. And that's also why most entrepreneurs don't succeed. It's because they don't do that work. They do the tangible stuff. They do the sexy stuff. Mindset isn't sexy.
Not at all. It's not sexy. It's not visible. I love that analogy.
Yeah.
I love that analogy. It reminds me of an analogy we use here. And I actually, now that I think of it, I think you seeded this analogy for me like maybe 4 or 5 years ago. But we use the analogy of an iceberg and talking about marketing and what marketing is. Most people, when they think of marketing, they think of the website, the logo, likes and follows on Facebook. And we try to communicate to them everything that you can see with marketing, everything that you can perceive with the 5 human senses, see, touch, hear, and whatever the other ones are, I can't remember. But everything that you can perceive with the 5 human senses are part of the 5% of the iceberg above the water that you can see. What supports that is the 95% of the iceberg underneath the water that you can't see. And that's where marketing has its power in understanding the mindset, things like your vision, your mission, your core values, and things that we just gloss over because they're not the fun, sexy stuff, but those are the things that really matter and really have the impact. So I'm so glad you said that. So glad you mentioned that. Awesome. So
I saw a picture of a tree the other day. I don't know that this is true for all trees, but I saw a picture, and it was an animated picture, but I think it was based on reality where, you know, similar to the iceberg, you see the tree above the ground, and then below the ground, you see the roots, and the roots are much deeper than the tree is high. And it's that same kind of concept that what actually creates the success is the stuff that's way more important before all of that. And what's happening in my market of coaching, and I think in personal development in general, but in online marketing, what's happening is people are buying the top of the iceberg. People are buying programs that say how to get more website visitors and how to get more followers on Facebook and how to get more subscribers on YouTube. None of that matters if you don't have the roots below. So we can take this same roots analogy and apply it to business as well. Because if you have 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, like where are they going to go? Right? Now YouTube has its own income stream where you can get paid on ads. But if you have fans and you have an audience, you know, Instagram, Facebook, where are they going to go? Just because you have 100,000 people doesn't mean anything. You can get them to enter the door, but what are they going to see when they come into your room? Your room better be furnished. and you better have a bunch of different rooms in your room, right? So it's really entering a house, not a room. And if all of that is not set up, then the worst thing you can have is actually a lot of people at your door. It's on many levels, emotionally, financially, psychologically. So my experience is that most people are trying to build this backwards from, you know, what it really takes. But again, it's not sexy.
I love that.
Not sexy.
I love that analogy. What do you say?
It's not sexy. It's only the truth.
That is for dang on sure. It's oh, I had a point and it just left me that quick. The analogy you gave about they can enter the door, but what's in the room? I got to steal that one from you too, because that's golden. That's everything. And it's because marketing is masked as one of those things that we need more followers. It's all about, you know, how many likes you have or how many people follow your page and all those things. And yeah, that matters a bit when it comes to social proof. But even these large companies and corporations, they're looking at people with these big followings, and it's not just an automatic, hey, we'll pay you to promote our stuff. What's the engagement that you have with your followers? You know, we don't care that you have 1 million followers. What type of engagement are you getting on each post? What type of views are you getting? They want to know those numbers behind that people aren't spending time to communicate or even gather that information, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of vanity metrics where, you know, you see somebody has a 30,000 email list or 100,000 or 1 million or followers and likes and fans and all that stuff. And unfortunately, people then think that that translates into cash, and it doesn't. You know, you can have 100,000 followers in a given platform and literally make no money because there isn't the engagement or there isn't furnishings in your house. Or you could have 300 followers and make a lot of money because not that business is all about money, but to speak about finances in a business, because you have what you're saying, you've got the engagement and the people are coming in and they know you and you know them. So quality is, I know we hear this a lot, quality over quantity. It's incredibly true. And what you want is to build a successful business while you have small quantity, a quality business with small quantity, and then increase the quantity. It's not what most people are doing. They're just trying to increase the quantity and then hopefully they build quality. But that's actually harder to do with more people. And I want to just give you some props real quick based on what you just said. I've worked with several different agencies and talked to a lot of people who have. And so, you know, I'm relatively familiar. And very often the push is just immediately, how can we get ads, get up and running as fast as possible and get traffic. And then what happens a lot of times, I'm not trying to, you know, throw people under the bus, but I do want to, you know, whistleblow some of the concepts that a lot of people don't understand. What happens is if I'm a marketing agency and I do the things that I have learned how to do that you don't know how to do, I can send you a bunch of traffic and I can send you a bunch of metrics and I can say, see, you're paying this amount of money for this amount of traffic. And there you go. I delivered. And on the other end, it's like, but nobody bought anything.
Yep.
Well, I did my job, right?
Yep.
As the marketing agency, I did my job. See, here's the proof. I delivered all these customers to your door. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that they should be responsible for that, you know, for what happens once they go through the door, because we're hiring them for a certain reason. But if they don't, if the clients aren't taken care of when they go through the door, then all of that money will be meaningless. And to bring it back to you, you know, for those of you that don't know much about Marcus or you haven't worked with him, the first thing he does is what we're talking about. What's the overall mission? Who are you? What do we want the message to be? What's the game plan? What's the full-on strategy, right? And before, it's all the roots that we're talking about, the foundation. Before we start sending people here, I, meaning Marcus, want to know where are they going? What are we doing with them after that? And if you can't answer those questions, you shouldn't be paying for traffic.
Man, thank you for Thank you for sharing that, man. And just to hear one who gets it, because it's not the popular thing to do, because marketing is one of those, I like to call it one of those arts that masks itself as a science. And people are just like, yeah, where's the traffic, all these other things. They don't want to hear about hey, what's your message? What's your heart message? What's your desire to connect with these people and why? And so just to hear you and several of our other clients, they share that with us. We defined who our ideal client was. And once we did that, we started seeing a lot more of us attracting the people who we were destined to work with, because they said, hey, I've done it this way, but I understand there's something deeper. And I know it's not the fun stuff, but I want to go through those things and sort of so that we can deliver the purpose that we have for the world. Right. So I'm so glad you shared that. And it's our mission to help people understand that a little more, that all of this is beneath the surface. The surface accounts for literally a small fraction of what it takes in your business, in your marketing, in your success, in your life, happiness. This is like a universal principle.
It's a universal principle. It's just being applied to business. It's not a business principle. And what I would say to anybody that's in business, and I don't mean to sound demeaning, and I don't want to be the buzzkill or anything like that, but what you think you need, if I had to bet my life one way or the other, I'd bet you're wrong. Because what we tend to think we need is not what we need, because we're seeing the above the surface stuff. And so I see this happen all the time where people go, okay, I know what I need. I need this, this, and this. And that's coming from the place in the brain that actually isn't rooted, right? And so more often than not, now I'm not saying that as a sweeping 100% statement, but if I had to bet my life, what you think you need is wrong. Just because I'm reporting from 15 years of doing this. I've been chasing things that I thought I needed for years as well, and they ended up being wrong. And the catch-22 here, I don't know if it's catch-22 or just kind of counter-intellectual, is that the things that we actually need, number one, are not the things that we're generally looking for, but they're also not the things that we see inherent value in, even when it's presented to us. And that's one of the reasons why people don't succeed in this industry, especially an industry where you don't need a business degree to get into it. You just need to claim yourself an entrepreneur. And we don't have the acumen. We don't have the studies. A lot of us haven't sat down with people that are business people, not just people that are like coaches and have learned how to make money. There's much more about business than just making money. And the things that we actually need, when they're presented to us, we're like, nah, I mean, that's not what I need. Yeah. And that's not what everybody's selling. It's not what everybody's talking about. Right. Exactly. Right. And the things that a lot of people are selling are actually not creating a lot of success, except for the people that are selling them.
That's for sure. That is absolutely for sure. It's one of those things. The squeaky wheel gets the noise. The squeaky wheel gets the oil.
Yeah,
we see a lot of, unfortunately, in marketing and promotion, especially in social media and on Facebook. And people have this kind of mob mentality when it comes to marketing. Just that, hey, I've seen so-and-so do this. They're successful. Let me try it as well. Not realizing there was a whole recipe that went into that success, or even perceived success in some cases, to make that. And without those ingredients and the recipe for that outcome, you're not going to get even with those ingredients and that recipe, you still won't get the same outcome because you're a different person. Right. So, but especially without that recipe and those ingredients, you won't get the same outcome. But people are just unfortunately, just so surface driven. So I'm just so glad to see that you, myself, and there's several other speakers on the summit. We're really about that inside. What are some of those hidden success secrets for your business, for your life, your business and your life? Because believe it or not, there's a lot we can't separate the two. They are intertwined. I know a lot of people say, hey, how do I have this work-life balance? One, we believe more in harmony as opposed to balance, but it's really this intertwined thing that you can't separate. And when you try to separate them, that actually brings, unfortunately, a lot more heartache and pain. So, wow. Yeah, man, we're going to have another session just on this topic right here, because we can go deep on this. I want to ask you another question that we got from Anonymous, which is okay if you have your name. So sometimes when people leave the comments, either in the pages or if you're responding to our emails, if we don't have your name, it just comes up as anonymous, which is perfectly fine. If you want to share your name, that's perfectly fine as well. And if you have more questions, just go ahead and enter them there in the chat. We'll get to as many as we possibly can with Sean while he is with us. This question is about your entrepreneurial laws. And it's from Anonymous. It says, how have these entrepreneurial laws changed in these times?
They've become more important. I don't think any of the laws change because they're fundamentals, right? Their rules change. Laws don't change. Not human laws, right? I'm not talking about codes, I'm talking about laws of what really works. And what's happening in these times is there's a lot of disruption. There's a lot of overwhelm. There's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of survival. The whole society in many ways has been disrupted in a combination that we've never seen. And the analogy that's hitting me right now is like if the wind is blowing 30 miles an hour, what I would say is stick to your roots, right? Because when the wind blows, the best thing to be centered around is your roots. So what's happening now is the winds are blowing at 3,000 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So staying to the roots are now just more important than they were before. So nothing's changed in the laws except their importance.
That's good. That's good. And for those of you, if you haven't seen Sean's session, seen the replay of Sean's session from day one, he's talking about his part 3 of 3 of the 9 irrefutable laws of entrepreneurialism. So if you haven't seen that, make sure you go back and watch that replay, because a lot of phenomenal information, life-changing information, a lot of pivots, mindset shifts, you name it, in that series. So that's from day one. So make sure to go back and watch that. We have a question from, I just lost it. Question from Michelle. Michelle asks, what is your advice for a new entrepreneur? How does one assess what they need at a foundational level?
It's a loaded question in many ways, just because there's so many different depths and angles and so many different areas of entrepreneurship and different products. And, and I know our audience here isn't just one type of business. Having said that, to give an answer that I think is actionable, but it's not going to be detailed, is you have to know yourself. And if you want to be an entrepreneur, there's something, let me say this. Nobody wants to be an entrepreneur. Nobody wants to be a business owner. People want to experience something that entrepreneurialism can give them. So maybe that's freedom. Maybe that's more money. Maybe that's status. Maybe it's ego. Whatever it is. Like there's something that having a job and working for somebody else doesn't provide you. And then you go, this path isn't giving me what I want. So let me go on this path, right? And I think that's a really important distinction to make, because similar to what we've been talking about, just the rules of how to build a business don't matter if you don't have the root alignment. So why are you doing this in the first place? What's the message that you want to get out? Or if somebody has a business that's not necessarily message driven, right? You know, you got a product business and you want to build a business and make a bunch of money. What do you want to do with that? What do you want to do with your freedom? What do you want to do? And then there might be a business or a message in that, but what's the point? Yeah. You know, I have started a little bit to use the word point instead of purpose. Not because I don't believe in purpose, because I just think it's overused and has become diluted. But essentially, it's the same question. What's the point? What's the point of you doing the work that you're doing? And being an entrepreneur will present so many quitting points. So many quitting points. And the faster you go, the faster they show up, right? Like I'm just thinking of, you know, riding your bike on a street, you know, and you're riding over the line, and you know how, you know, in a lot of the street lines, they've got the little reflectors, you know, the little tiny bumps. Right, in a car, you barely feel them. But in a bike, if you're riding over the reflectors and you're going 1 mile an hour, you're going to be hitting one and then hitting one and then hitting one. You're going 10 miles an hour, you're going to be hitting one and hitting one and hitting one. It's going to get bumpier and bumpier as you go faster. But the cool thing about that analogy is when you can hit a speed to where you're actually going fast enough that you don't notice the bumps or they don't do much to you because they've just become part of the pavement almost, right? And so much of entrepreneurship is our relationship to the bumps, our relationship to the failure. You will lose money. You will waste time. You will make a lot of mistakes. Yeah. I don't know if I shared this with you, and this is maybe wildly inappropriate to just drop right now, but for 4 months one time in 2013, I believe, all of my links that I was sending on email to a list of 20, 25,000 people was sending people to a violent porn site. Because I had some virus. It was a mobile virus too. So I was checking everything on my computer. And somebody sent me a text like, I don't think you wanted to send me where you just sent me, did you? And I checked it and it was fine. They're like, no, that's fine. So then I sent another email out and basically said, you know, sorry if some of you went to a weird site. Here's another one. And it sent it to them again. And then I got the virus removed, so I thought. And then I told everybody, I really, really apologize. Everything has been taken care of. Here, click this link right here to go to my newsletter. And it was any link that was on anything that I owned, right? It could be just a newsletter online or anything. And I was basically trying to apologize and telling him everything's been fixed. And it didn't get fixed for like 4 months. Until finally I learned that this virus actually recreates itself and you can remove it from one domain and it'll look like it's gone. And then the next day it'll just shift back over to that domain, right? Wow. It was the reason I bring that up is, you know, I don't know how much more damage you could do to a brand to send a primarily conservative, fairly religious group of almost all women to violent porn for a few months. Right?
True.
Oh, sorry. Like, I don't know what else to say. My point in bringing that up is, number one, all the mistakes that you can probably make, I'll trade you. Right? All the things that you're probably afraid of won't top that one. And you can't be an entrepreneur afraid of making mistakes. You just can't. So much of this journey is about our relationship to ourselves, to failure, our relationship to the bumps, to judgment. And that's why we need roots. So I'm not going to give any different answer to this question, actually, because we already alluded to it. Start with you. What is it that you actually want? And then we can look at what kind of business do you want? You know, I'm in the coaching space. My assessment is that almost all coaches are trying to build a business that, number one, is impossible for them to build from where they are. And number two, doesn't even give them what they want, right? Like I teach, there are 3 different kinds of businesses, and almost everybody's trying to build number 2 and 3. First of all, you can't get to 2 and 3 unless you build number 1 successfully. But most people don't even want anything that 2 and 3 would provide, because there's so many more expenses and vulnerability and exposure and team. And it's like, you don't even want that. Just be happy here, right? But that requires us to know what here is. And when we don't build a business that's wrapped around us, then we just have to hope that our business brings us along. And it usually will not. Because how can it if it's not wrapped around us? And so many people, because they're following game plans from other people like you alluded to, so many people are just following somebody else's recipe, and their humanity is not in the other person's recipe. So even if you succeeded at somebody else's recipe, you're not in it. And so it can't give you the fulfillment that a business can that's designed to support you and your message. So that's what we need to know. And then anything above that depends on what the answers to that is, or what those answers are. So that's why, you know, it's almost a waste of time to say, and then do this, and then do this, and then do this, and then do this. Like, let's understand what the seeds are and who you are, right? Because I might be talking to 2 different people and go, all right, you need to do podcasts. I had another client just recently going, dude, we need to get you in front of the camera all the time. Yeah. And there are other people that are terrified of the camera. Yeah. And so we don't want to start a YouTube channel for you, because I don't want to force you into something that you're not going to do. So let's start with writing a blog. And then other people's like, don't do anything other than just go get individual clients, you know? And so it's so varying. But you have to know you first. And I know I didn't give a 1, 2, 3 answer, because it doesn't exist. In my experience, it just doesn't exist.
Love that. I love that. It's everybody's looking for that formula, that 1, 2, 3 formula for business, life, marketing, all of these things. And
let me touch on that. The 1, 2. Here's why people are looking for the 1, 2, 3 formulas, because they don't want to fail. Yeah. That's why we buy guaranteed formulas, because we don't want to fail. And I want to remind everyone what I said a few moments ago. You cannot build a business being afraid of failing. So you don't want to even buy products that are going to increase a muscle you don't need. Not only do you not need it, it will hurt you. Yeah. It's like when people try to get over their fear of speaking, what they do is they learn how to not fail. So they learn the rules of speaking. They learn how to put a speech together. They learn the way to put PowerPoint together. They learn how to move on stage. Learning the rules of not failing is not healing your fear of visibility. Getting to the point where you're no longer afraid to fail while visible, that's when you'll be over this fear of speaking.
I hope y'all know that's a mic drop moment, a big mic drop moment, big nugget.
Not this one, though.
Not his new Shure, not his new Shure microphone.
You just literally made me, I just put my hands under it. Like, not you, baby. You're good. I was like this.
Just joining us, Sean just purchased literally yesterday, and it just came in the mail last night, a new Shure microphone, which is the industry hands down standard of microphones. So he's on don't beef him up about his new Shure microphone. We did have a comment earlier in the chat. I was looking back to it. Janet in Dubai. Hey, Janet in Dubai said, She says, ask Sean to talk into the mic like Luther Vandross.
I don't know that I have that one. That's not in my toolbox.
That is awesome. Cool beans. But yeah, so definitely a mic drop, not his sure, but a mic drop moment. That fear of visibility, it masks itself in so many different forms. The fear of failure, all these different fears. And I love some of the programs that I've been in with you and how we get to the root causes of all those fears, fear of visibility, fear of failure, and fear of so many fears are related to root cause issues that we never think about, we never touch, often that were formed when we were kids as a matter of protection. And now that we kind of carried with us into our adulthood, not knowing where they came from, not knowing their purpose, or not even knowing that they exist. Exactly. And it's like a stealthy sabotage that we're not even aware of, that is just always there. And we're like, hey, how can I not, why am I not doing what I'm supposed to do? Why am I not reaching to the next level? Why am I not succeeding at this thing when I know X, Y, and Z about my business? Right. And so I love how that all even ties back around to what you said from the beginning, that root cause and focusing on your roots, strengthening your roots. That's awesome. Awesome sauce. We have a question from Abhishek, if I pronounced your name correctly. Question from Abhishek. How can a small business, how can a small business make an impact with the, I see what you're asking. How can a small business make a positive impact in the Black Lives Matter movement without a negative impact to their finances?
That's a really powerful question, and I'm glad that you asked it, for sure. There's many depths to it that we could probably go on for 3 hours. But number one, I want to highlight a rooted, embedded belief just in the question itself. And this may be true or not for you specifically, but in the words, there's a belief that says, if I do this thing, I might lose money. And that's a very common belief that causes a lot of entrepreneurs to be afraid of taking action, because the fear is, if I do anything different, then what's the negative impact going to be? Mm. And that belief is actually the default belief for so many of us. And that's why most people need to be motivated into action, because the default belief is don't take action. The reason that's don't take action is because we've been programmed that the only way you get hurt, the only way you lose things, is by taking the wrong action. So hopefully this is landing as clearly and as significantly as I know this concept really truly is. If you constantly need to be, and I'm just speaking conceptually here, and then I'll go to the question. Mm-hmm. If we constantly need to be motivated to take action, then we're going to need to know that our actions will be successful. Mm-hmm. That we won't lose anything, which is impossible in every single way. Yeah. To know that a future action is going to produce a certain outcome, right? I mean, just think of how many people ramped up some marketing campaigns like in March of this year. Yeah. And everybody was sent to their homes in mid-March, right? You just never know what's going to happen. So we got to get out of the embedded demand that most of us have for us to know the future outcomes before we take action. So that's just a highlight of a belief that I believe just showed up in that question. Specifically, I think it's important for you to know what you want your message to be in this Black Lives Matter conversation. And if you're not sure about that message, get sure about it. Sorry, something was a little disruption here. Get sure about that as much as you can, because you don't want to speak about something that ends up having a negative impact on you emotionally as well, not just finances. I'll touch on that in a moment too. And one thing that you can do is, like, I'm going to give a totally different analogy that might seem like it makes no sense whatsoever. But I'm really good with a comedian, a professional comedian, and like, he won Comedian of the Year a while back, and like, he's hit some high levels. And one of the things I learned is that, well, actually, I went to a show of his one time, and he had, I think, Paul Reisner, forget what his name is, a guy that's like super popular. If you don't know his name, you would know his face. He's been on a bunch of TV shows, movies, and so forth. And he was like in this little comedy club. And I asked my friend, like, what in the world is he doing here? And he goes, oh, he's testing out material. And I was like, what does that mean? And so what I found out is these big time comedians, before they do like an HBO special, they hit the road. They go to, like, open mic nights sometimes. They go to these small places, and all they're doing is testing material. So they're writing all these jokes. They're testing them. They're not crushed if the audience doesn't like them, because what's better, to be crushed in a 30-person audience in some open mic night, or to be crushed on HBO during your special, right? So they go through a fairly intense process of testing material so that they know what gets laughs, and then they'll know when it's ready for the big stage. And I never knew that. I just thought Chris Rock just says, hey, I want to do a special, and the cameras roll, and then he just wings it, right? And maybe that's because that's what I usually do. But that's not responsible, nor is it safe, especially around messages that are really meaningful to you. And in this case with Black Lives Matter, not only is it a message that's meaningful to you, but it's a very tender message that is incredibly sensitive to all people, really, that's paying attention, right? Both sides of the fence. And so what you can do is test your material out before you launch some campaign or send an email out, or, put signs up if you've got a brick and mortar business. Before you actually go public, go private first for a while, right? I've been pretty public over the last few weeks in the Black Lives Matter conversation. I've been private for years, talking with a lot of people, learning a lot of stuff about myself, about the process. And then even in the last few weeks, I've had, I don't know how many private conversations, one-on-one, private Zoom meetings with just white people and just Black people and just Trump supporters, right? Like, I've been doing a lot of research to some degree, sort of testing material. And that's going to be different for all of us, because I don't know what your small business is and what you sell and how meaningful this message is to you. But what I would want you to think about differently is not, how can I get this message out without impacting my business negatively? Can you read the back half of that statement again, Marcus, so I know exactly the words that were used? Yep.
I'm rephrasing it a little bit. How can we make a positive impact to the Black Lives Matter movement without a negative impact to our finances?
So what I would ask, because your brain will answer that question, and your brain is going to focus on negative impact to finances, because that's the question that you ask. Your brain doesn't even hear without. Technically, we hear it, but really, what you're putting, the energy that you're putting into the question is negative impact to finances, and that elicits fear. So now we're trying to do something that won't do something else, right? So my invitation to you is, how do I make an impact in the Black Lives Matter movement while increasing my finances? Give that to your brain. Your brain can solve that question just as easily as the other one. But now you're focused on movement and push and positive results, rather than how can I do something without messing up.
That's good. I love that. A reframe. I've been doing that. So I've been with Sean now for almost going on 6 years. And one thing that he's taught me is your brain answers whatever question you put in front of it. Your subconscious mind answers whatever question you put in front of it. So give it a better question to answer. Right. And so I love that tactic of just simply shifting one word in that question, and having your brain experiment with that answer, right? Coming from a solution base as opposed to a fear base. I love that solution.
Yeah. And one more distinction to put on this, without making a negative impact triggers safety, while making a positive impact triggers growth. And it's really difficult to grow while being tethered and anchored to safety. And then one more thing, ask your people in private, ask some of your customers, what do you think? Like, what can we do? How can, and when you put out a new message, there are new customers that are going to come to you based on the new message that they don't currently hear. And if you lose some, you'll gain more generally, as long as it's aligned and, you're not doing anything that's out of integrity.
That's good.
That's how you get the new growth.
It's essential. It's like there was a gardener here at my house a couple of years ago, and a nice little tree that the previous owners had planted. And he was like, you have a lemon tree in your backyard. And I'm like, I love lemons. How do I have that? And he's like, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the tree so that it'll grow. I'm like, what? He's like, I'm going to cut the tree so that it'll grow. I have to prune it back so it'll grow. But your business is the same way. There's dead weight, dead customers, and not dead customers, but dead weight of, customers that aren't your ideal customers that you do need to shed. And sometimes events like this actually reveal that. I was I was on social media and somebody sent me, what's the guy owns Amazon?
Bezos.
Second.
Jeff Bezos.
Yes, Jeff Bezos. Of a email he got from a customer, because Jeff Bezos, the owner of Amazon, is very vocal about Amazon's position on the Black Lives Matter movement. And he was talking about he's gotten all kind of emails, some of love, some of hate. But one email he actually took a screenshot of and posted it. It was talking about how could he, it was basically just cursing him out and calling Black people all sorts of names. And the guy said, I will never do business with you again, because he was supporting the Black Lives Matter movement, probably speaking to your initial fear. And Jeff Bezos' response was, you are the type of customer I am happy to lose. Happy. Right? Do you realize? So it's one thing we talk about in marketing, and I know the marketing and sales conversation is next, but it pertains to this. The more you, excuse the terminology, but the more you piss off the people who are not meant for your brand, the more you invite and attract those people who genuinely want and desire your brand, right?
Piss them off faster.
Say again?
Piss them off faster.
Yeah, exactly. So Jeff Bezos, he's happy to get rid of that customer. I'm happy to, I've also, been active in the Black Lives Matter movement. I'm happy to get rid of those customers who like, oh yeah, I'm, either I'm not comfortable or I'm not whatever. They didn't like that, like what we were saying about it. And I'm not saying anything crazy, just saying, hey, we are in support. We support diversity and inclusion. Kind of hard not to, knowing the owner of the company. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
But
hey, I didn't know you supported Black Lives. I'm never going to support you again.
You'd be surprised the responses even I've gotten about that. But it's important. It's almost like that gardener was talking about pruning the tree. It's a necessary thing for that tree to grow. Same thing with Jeff Bezos, the support that he now has in the Black. I mean, to see that and to see it public. It just shows that, hey, we're in this together. I'm going to stand for what's right, regardless of the consequences. And usually when you stand for what's right, regardless of the consequences, it usually brings you more of what you desire anyway. Right. And so,
because the main part of that statement is stand for what's right.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the opposite? Stand for what's wrong if you're going to get good outcomes. I mean, is that actually what we want anyway? Like people are going to act however they're going to act, but you're the one that's going to look in the mirror and judge your life based on whether you did what's right, according to you, not according to anybody else, because it's impossible to do what's right for everybody out there. As soon as you take a stance, half the population, maybe more, could be depending on whatever you're taking a stance on, but a good chunk of the population is going to either dislike you or maybe even hate you. Yeah. And most of our stances actually don't even get the majority of public opinion. Yeah. So if that's the measurement that we're using, then we're judging doing what's right in our heart based on other people's responses. And even if I'll use a somewhat inappropriate analogy maybe, but it so lands.
No, please.
We say in our community, stop prostituting your soul for your intellect, for your ego. Stop prostituting your soul for your ego. The reason we care about what other people think is our ego. Yeah. So how many times do we prostitute our soul? If you give me approval, I'll give you my thoughts. I'll be who you want me to be so that you approve of me. If you live your life that way, I don't want to be insensitive, but I just don't think that's a life well lived. No. I don't think we're going to look back and go, I made a lot of people happy. I was dying inside, but I made a lot of people happy. And it's really not about making a lot of people happy. It's how many people can I not make unhappy? Again, it's safety. It's fear of the negative consequences. And I just want to highlight your point. When you take a stand, you put a magnet out for other people. I just went to a different store than I usually go to. I won't use the name just because I don't want to direct people, but I always go to a certain store to buy certain things. And I heard something about that store as it relates to Black Lives Matter and where they stand on it. And I went somewhere else. So somebody got my, $50 last weekend, and who knows how many other people would do that too. So trust that your magnet, in terms of your message, will attract who it needs to attract. And if you're not currently sharing that magnet, or it's not turned up as much, then just know there's a lot of people that are on their way as soon as you boldly share what's right in terms of what you believe in.
I love that. Absolutely love that. That's amazing. And Abhishek, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, thank you very much for that question. If you have any follow-up or anything from that, that's a great question, and one that a lot of people have, and that many are afraid to ask. So thank you for asking that question. Abhishek, I'm not sure if you were here during the day 2 conscious conversation where and I encourage you all, if you weren't live on that conversation, it was a great conversation. And the conscious conversation was one that we had talking, the whole hour was talking about the Black Lives Matter movement and in memory of the Black Lives Lost and how small businesses can make an impact during this time. And so we go into that for a full hour. So feel free, watch that replay, or please watch that replay as well. That replay is free for everybody for life. And so the VIP purchasers of the summit, they get all the sessions for life. For the free attendees of the summit, it's all these sessions for 24 hours, except for that session. That session is free for life for everyone, no matter which tickets that you have, because we want people to look at that video and ask questions. Ask the questions. We're going to do follow up from that conversation because there's more questions. There's more interactions, just like the question you asked. So thank you so much for that. For those of you who are just joining us, if you're here for the sales and marketing, you are in the right place, because we are having an amazing Q&A with Sean Smith with the 9 Irrefutable Laws of Entrepreneurship. Sean, I have one more question for you, and then we'll roll into the sales and marketing conversation, which you are welcome to join us and stay for. I would actually love that. But we also know Sean is super busy as well. I'll leave that up to you.
Okay.
Final question that we have here comes from Ayana, and Ayana asks, okay, thank you so much. This summit has been great. A lot of good information, but a lot of the information is stuff that I've already known before. So why is it that I'm not doing what I know I should do?
There's a difference between, well, I know this is one that you like. Knowledge is not a breakthrough. Yeah. Just because you know something doesn't mean you got it. And actually, when we know things, but we're not implementing them, more knowledge is dangerous because we're not implementing the collection of knowledge that we currently have. And so there's a huge distinction between intellectual knowledge and embodied knowledge. What that means is whenever we come into any kind of discomfort, we will always fall to the level of our embodied knowledge. We won't rise to the level of our intellectual knowledge. We think we will. But when the heat gets turned up, the intellect is the first one off the plane. The intellect is packed and ready to jump as soon as things get uncomfortable. So what's happening, and it's worse in today's world because we have access to infinite amounts of information. But information is useless unless implemented. Like, what's the point, right? You could have all of the ingredients of a chocolate cake laid out on the counter and enjoy the cake unless you actually put them together, right? And then cook it and, bake it and put the icing on and all that. You got to implement the recipe. So just having the ingredients isn't enough. And I say that not to make you feel bad, to actually hopefully give you an awareness of why this is happening and to let you know that's 95% of the people are not implementing the things that they know, but they intellectually know. And a lot of times when I do webinars or presentations, I'll tell people, don't ask yourself if you know what I'm about to say, because a lot of this stuff is elementary. Ask yourself if you do it. And if you don't do it, then you really don't know it. And this is, again, a concept that goes well beyond just business, but it's certainly applied to business as well. My answer, without being able to give you specifics because I don't know who you are, is you have a root anchor that's not allowing you to implement knowledge that your brain has. And it could be fear of visibility. It could be fear of success. The fear of success is another one. I know we don't have a lot of time to dive into that one. I've talked on that for hours.
Take your time. Take your time.
The fear of success is wildly dangerous because it makes no intellectual sense. That why would we be afraid of the target we've been shooting for? Doesn't make any sense. But more people are afraid of success than they are of failure, actually. And the fear of success does more damage than the fear of failure. So if somebody gets over the fear of failure in whatever way they do it, but they still have the fear of success, you can't win. And just think about it. If you don't know there's an anchor and a fear of what success might mean, if you don't know about it, then you can't solve it. You can't solve a problem you're unaware of. And when the problem is built into the thing you're chasing, now we're incredibly conflicted, right? It's kind of like, in relationships. If you're not in a relationship, you probably want to be in one, right? And if you want to be in a relationship, if you ask yourself the question, why, at some point, probably after a few responses, right? So you might say something like, well, because I want somebody to do life with. I want to, go, go to the movies and have fun with. I want somebody to care about. I want somebody to share things with. I want somebody to care for me. At some point, you're going to say some version of connection. If you've ever been hurt in a relationship before, you were only hurt after connection, especially the deep pain, right? So if you've been hurt in a relationship before, essentially what our brains tell us is, I don't ever want my heart hurt again. And how did it get hurt last time? I gave it to somebody. And so we say, oh, I know how to not let my heart get hurt again. Don't ever give it to anybody. So now, which is the exact opposite of connection, which is what we want. So now in a relationship context, we are seeking and terrified of the same thing. That concept applies to success in business and sometimes in life as well. We're seeking and terrified of the same thing. And whatever the roots are, will win. So we can have all the knowledge. I've done this many times. I'm positive you've done this, Marcus, and I think everybody's going to agree with what I'm about to say. You've been highly skilled at something. You know exactly what to do. Maybe you've rehearsed it over and over and over again. And when it came time to act, you froze. Did that ever happen to you, Marcus? It's happened to me a ton of times. That's a perfect example of our intellect is 100% prepared and our body goes, nope, nope, I'm not moving. It's like we're taking the tree and we go, I want this tree to be over there. And we're taking the tree and just trying to slide it across the ground. That's not how trees move, right? If you want that tree to be over there, we need to move the roots. I've never had that analogy. Like, it's just so, nobody would try to move the tree above the ground, but yet we try to move our lives without the below the surface work. So it's a very common issue. The answer is essentially the same as what we've been talking about over the last hour, is dig into the roots. What is it that's causing you to stop? And the best way to find that out is pay attention to when you do stop, right? Like what I tell my clients all the time, if we're dealing with something like that, you know, I'll give them some kind of a homework assignment or something, right? And if they don't make the phone calls, let's say, I want to know, what was your thought right before you stopped? Because that gives me the clues. So somebody might go, I was about to make a phone call, and then right before I thought, they're probably eating dinner. Okay. So this person is probably afraid of bothering people. People who are afraid of bothering people usually have low self-esteem. Got it. Let's go there. So we need a little bit of evidence to find out when and how you sabotage, and then we can find the roots, and then you can start implementing the knowledge that you've already got collected. For most of us, you guys, we would be better off if we could suck out about 90% of the knowledge we have and just implement the 10% that we need. That would do nothing but change our lives in just about every area. Yeah, me too. I was speaking to myself there. You guys are just listening to a self-coaching session right there. That's all that was.
That's me all day, every day right there. I'm like, yeah, implementation is I love information and crave information. It's something we do and utilize as a business, but it's that implementation. And like you said, if we could suck out that desire to get, and I love learning and love sharing what I learn. And I think you said it best a couple of years ago. Learning is one of those things that it's great, but it's stealthy. It's like learning is one of those things that masks itself, that we can be in movement when we're just learning, but that's not the case. Learning should be a catalyst for movement, but it in itself is not like movement or something like that.
Yeah.
You remember what I'm saying?
Add a word to that. It's stealthy and it's also sterile. There's no emotion in information.
Mm.
And our intellect is emotionally safe. The reason we're afraid of speaking or success or money or relationships is because we don't want the emotional damage. We don't want to feel bad.
Right.
Information doesn't provide feelings. So if we're afraid of our emotional vault, it's way safer to just stay in the informational vault. You know, let's stay in the information room, because the emotion room is where all my pain is, right? The emotion room, yeah, but it's also where all your happiness is. Mm. And so many of us have cut ourselves off from the emotions we don't want to feel, and then we've become highly intellectual. And some of that, and this is not anti-information, by the way. We need both. But some of us have become so intellectual and so driven by information. And underneath that is a fear of emotion. A lot of times, fear of feeling, right? And what you just said a moment ago is around information. The only reason to learn something is to do something with it. Yeah. Knowledge without knowledge without implementation is ignorance. Mm. And I would say knowledge without implementation is dangerous ignorance. Mm. Because the more knowledge we collect, the less likely we are to implement, right? I mean, think if you're carrying around like 5 pounds of knowledge that you're not implementing, what's the worst thing you can do? Add another 5 pounds on. Yeah. Now you got 10 pounds you're not implementing, right? Let's work on implementation of what's there, and then we can scale up. So with every ounce of love and sensitivity in my body to Ayana, was that the name, I think?
Yes.
Stop learning. And until you implement what you have already learned, or at least some of what you've already learned to take forward motion, don't learn anything more. Hmm. You know, and I'm not saying like literally don't watch videos and stuff like that, but the focus should, at a conceptual level, implement over learning. And so much of what we need to learn can only come through implementation anyway. The real stuff, the good stuff. The rooted stuff, the entrepreneurial stuff.
The best stuff, yeah, the entrepreneurial and small business ownership stuff all come through implementation.
After action, not before.
I love that, after action. I was talking with someone a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about getting advanced degrees, and they were asking me about my experience with my graduate degrees. And I said, well, I said this way. I'm a advocate for education, but I think people have confused information with education. Mm. And I tell them that everything I do in my business now, none of it I learned in my formal education. It's all been in business. What I do in business right now, I learned in business after all the degrees and all that other stuff. So I would have to agree. Ayana, thank you for that question. That was absolutely amazing. And I told you guys, if you didn't know Sean, or this is your first experience with Sean, you were in for a treat, because the nuggets and diamonds that were just dropped by Sean with his Shure microphone just now, absolutely amazing. So Sean, I can't thank you enough, man. This was
anytime, brother.
As always, great. And for everyone that joined for the marketing Q&A, we're doing that right now. In fact, we're only stopping the session just for sake of the video to start recording the new session. So you are in the right place. So it'll be about a 10-second transition to the marketing Q&A. Sean, again, thank you, Sean. Would love to, I know you're super busy, but if you have some time, love for you to stick around for that marketing Q&A as well.
Yeah, I will painfully decline just because I got to run to some other stuff. But I'm a yes for whenever whenever we can do more of this.
Understandable, perfectly understandable. So what we'll do right now, everyone, we're going to take about a 10-second transition. Just a quick reminder and recap. Some of the questions came from Sean's replay of the three of the 9 entrepreneurial laws of the 9 irrefutable laws of entrepreneurship, as well as the conscious community connection conversation that was on day 2, and Sean's presentation that some of the questions came from was on day 1. So please go back in the replays and watch both of those because you get a lot more in depth and see where some of these questions came from. So with that, thank you again, Sean. Thank you everybody for attending. Stay put. We're going to be right back here in about 10-15 seconds with the marketing and sales Q&A. So we will see you all in about 10-15 seconds.
Take care, everyone. Thanks, Marcus.
Thank you, man.